Hello, welcome back to the channel. I have another fun video for you today. I'm recording this the morning after the Canlandex Invitational, so I'm a little tired. Thank you so much to everyone who tuned in. It was a ton of fun. We really enjoyed playing. If you're looking for those videos, the VOD for Trent's POV is available on our channel, and then the VOD from my perspective is available on our Twitch channel at LJT MTG, and then the VODs for both Trent and Nelson are for both JR and Nelson are also available on their various Twitch channels as well, twitch.tv/JRHWhite and twitch.tv/CoachDeli. We're going to do some other content with those videos as well, so you'll see some stuff here, but if you really just want to watch the full 4-hour tournament, you can go watch those there. Today, I have for you the Lorwyn Eclipsed set review. We almost didn't do this one, to be really honest with you. Lorwyn Eclipsed is obviously a return to Lorwyn, which is a storied and very exciting plane. It's an in-universe plane, so it's a nice change of pace for sure. The big thing about this set, and I've found this a lot with many of the recent in-universe sets in particular, the mechanics for these sets have tended to feel fairly parasitic, and as a result, not that many of the cards have felt super high impact for Canadian Highlander. Obviously, we've gotten a few. There's been a kind of smattering of playables, but nothing that's really knocked your socks off recently. Unless it's a blue card. There's been a couple of very good blue cards, but that's more or less it. But I'm going to do the set review. Nonetheless, I think it's good to talk about the cards. If I miss anything and you think that I should have talked about it, feel free to ask about it in the comments. I'd be more than happy to give my thoughts. These are just the cards that I wanted to talk about. Normally, my categories are format staples, and then playables, and then maybe in one deck, and then I will definitely die to this card, which is just like cards that I think are maybe a little clunky, but I think I will die to them. And for this review, I've amended it a little bit because I think basically nothing in the set hits the level of format staple. So I have started us off with playables. I think these are cards that people are going to play. I'm not convinced that any of them are going to become major staples in any particular deck, but I think you can play them. So we'll start with Formidable Speaker. This is 2 and a green for an elf druid. When this creature enters, you may discard a card. If you do, search your library for a creature card, reveal it, put it into your hand, and then shuffle. And then for 1 and tapping it, you can untap another permanent. This is the World Champion card for 2019. Pretty cool. 19, is that right? Yeah, I think that's right. Anyway, so the things to like about this card, obviously tutoring your creature for while adding a body to the board is quite powerful. And I do think that this card is going to see play in like your Flash Hulk strategy, because that deck just really wants as many ways as possible to find Hulk, and Hulk is the hardest piece to find cleanly, and this is a good way to do it. I also think you'll see this card played in the Nadu strategies. It seems pretty good there. It's just like, again, I feel like I say this a lot when we're talking about green cards, but like these decks are not very well represented in the metagame currently. And then the other thing that keeps this card from really being like a major player, in my opinion, is the fact that you have to discard to get its effect, which means like it's a bad top deck. Like if you're empty-handed and you just draw this, you have to wait another turn in order to turn it into the best creature in your deck, which is like not really where you want to be. And as a result, I think that kind of keeps this card closer to being like maybe like a 7 out of 10 instead of like a 9. Or something like that. The untap another permanent, you can imagine, I think, some pretty nice Magical Christmas Land universes where you get to untap like Gaia's Cradle or something like that. Obviously very good. But because it costs 1 to do, like this doesn't make mana on its own. You've got to have a creature that actually makes at least a creature or land, or you have to have a permanent that makes at least 2 mana for this to be making mana. So it's like all of the effects on this card are like good, but not quite pushed enough to be like, wow, this is really good. But yeah, the decent card. I think you'll see play. Particularly, I mean, I think Flash Hulk likes this card. Just, Fierce Empath is a card that features in Flash Hulk, and while I think this is slightly worse in that deck, it's not enough worse that they won't play it. Next, we have Hexing Squelcher, a name that no one is going to be especially happy to say, I think, especially often. This is 1 and a red for a 2/2 Goblin Sorcerer. This spell can't be countered. It has Ward, pay 2 life. Spells you control can't be countered, and other creatures you control have Ward, pay 2 life. So this one's just kind of like annoying. Like Spider Punk is a card that has already seen relatively widespread adoption across the red aggressive decks, and this is another card in that same vein that is going to punish blue decks, because if they're sitting there behind a hand of counter spells and then this comes down, it's obviously very awkward. The Ward 2 is nice as well. Like, because this is only a 2/2, it's not the most impactful thing on the board, but they can't just play something that's bigger, plan to block it, and then eventually remove it and have it have no impact. Like, the Ward 2 means that, like, it's going to get some damage in no matter what, which is nice. It also makes it so that, like, your other creatures are much more annoying to deal with, so they can't just say, oh, I'm going to use my removal spells to kill things afterwards. Like, it lines up pretty nicely to be a nuisance. Like, I think that's kind of what this card's role is going to be. It's not going to be like, oh my god, they had the Hexing Squelcher, so I lost. But like, you're gonna see this card have an impact in games, I think, absolutely. And is it gonna seem play more widely than Spider Punk? I don't know. The Riot on Spider Punk is pretty nice, but I mean, Mono Red loves this card, as dead as that deck has felt recently. Maybe this is something that helps bring it back. Green Red probably likes this card a fair amount. Any of the kind of red aggressive strategies, I think, are probably interested in this one. Oh wow, I put these this high. Jeez. This is, I think, a bit of a testament to just how not deep this set is. So I think I'm on slide 2, and I'm already showing you cards where I'm gonna have to say, well, look, hear me out. Let's start with Lockmare, because I think it's the more powerful of these two cards. I should have reordered them. But so Lockmare is 1 and a blue for a Horse Serpent. Excellent type line. So it's a 4/5 that enters with 3 -1/-1 counters. And then for 1 and a blue, you can remove a counter from this card to draw a card. For 2 and a blue, you can remove 2 counters from this card, tap target creature, put a stun counter on it. So what I like about this card is, a 2-mana 2/3 is not something that you would be especially interested in playing if it had no other text. But this isn't a 2-mana 2/3, right? It's a 2-mana 4/5, and you can get it, or sorry, it's a 2-mana 1/2 that turns into a 2-mana 4/5. But you can get it to be a 3/4 on the very next turn against creature decks, which I think matters. I think that against creature decks are the situations where you're really going to want to make sure that this is a relevant body. But like, outside of being more vulnerable to damage-based removal, like the turn it comes down, I don't think you're super upset with, kind of structuring this over 2 turns where you spend your 2 mana on the first turn, and then, if the texture of the game is such that you don't need to spend 3 mana the next turn stunning something and making this a bigger creature, that's fine. You just won't do it. You can either hold up counter magic. This gets to sit around while you hold up counter magic and then draw cards. I think this card's actually going to be sneaky quite powerful. And what we've seen over the last couple of years is that the 2 mana slot is the most important slot. It's contextual, obviously, game to game, but for these blue decks, a lot of the time, they need to be able to, from basically turn 3 onward, not be tapping out. Unless it's to answer something that their opponent has already done. It's challenging, I think, if you're playing a counterspell-based deck, to be tapping out for a 3-drop, and 4-drops are basically right out in most games. So the fact that this costs 2 and then kind of has these abilities that are both pretty decent in different kinds of matchups, I think is pretty nice. And yeah, it's obviously not going to win the game really, really quickly, but I think that there's enough good stuff on this card that I think you're going to see people reaching for it and registering it. Because realistically, like, it just dies to all the same stuff that most other 2-drops die to. Like, I mean, yes, it's going to die to Lightning Bolt the turn it comes down, but like, if your 2-drop gets Lightning Bolted, like, there's not that many 2-drops that you would play that don't. So I think it's fine. Next is Glenalendra's Answer. This card is pretty interesting. So it's 2 blue for an instant. It says this spell can't be countered. And then it says counter all spells your opponents control, and all abilities your opponents control. and then you create a 1/1 black fairy creature token with flying for each spell and ability countered this way. So I like this card for two reasons. One, I think if you're going to be paying 4 mana for a counter spell, it kind of has to have this spell can't be countered clause on it. But I do like that this is just like unconditional, get everything on the stack. I think that's already really interesting. That kind of card has historically seen play and has seen play less in more recent years. But the other part about this that I think is pretty interesting is that normally you are getting punished because when you hold up a counterspell of this nature, you are not going to be developing to the board, and that's not the case here. And yeah, most of the time this is probably only making like maybe one, a lot of the time it's only going to make one fairy token. Sometimes it's, if it ever makes 2 or 3, I think you're very happy. And maybe it's just the fact that I just played a tournament with Esper tokens, and the random creation of tokens felt really powerful to me. But I genuinely think that like you might just play 4 mana, 1/1 flash flyer. This spell can't be countered, counter target spell. That's already pretty close, I think, to good. And the fact that this also hits abilities is pretty relevant. It's relevant that this is a way that you can get Eldrazi. Not that that comes up a ton in the format, but it adds to the kind of general efficacy. And what I also like is that this is something that you can play if your opponent has managed to slip a permanent into play, like that is problematic the turn prior. If you get to untap with this, you can stop the activation, which is not, again, going to come up all the time, but it is going to come up. It's not nothing. So this is my hear me out card. I think this one's playable. I think this one's better than it looks. Although I would not fault you at all for saying, that I'm wrong. Okay, so next we have Glenelendra Guardian. This is a 2 and a blue fairy wizard. It's a flash flying creature. It's a 3/4, but really it's a 2/3 because it enters with a -1/-1 counter on it. And then it has 1 and a blue, remove a counter from this creature, counter target non-creature spell. Its controller draws a card. So obviously the reference here is Glenelendra Archmage, a card that was Canadian Highlander playable for a decade, and now it's not because it costs 4 mana. The really important thing about this card is that it has flash. Like I was talking about before, with the Horse Serpent. What is that card called? Lockmare. It's really key that you are not tapping out in your main phase, like kind of on turn 3 onward, in these blue decks. And so Glenelendra Guardian's like another card in this vein that'll help you not do that. I don't know how widespread it's going to be. Like, not every deck is going to want to play this card, but I do think a decent amount of them will. Jer's really excited about this card, I know, which is cool. He thinks it's going to be great in blue-black tempo. And the kind of interesting thing that this card does that he pointed out was that once it's in play, your opponent kind of has a weird time targeting your non-creature spells with counters as well, because you could always cash this in to kind of recycle your spell, like just counter it but draw a card, which is not bad either. Obviously, the countering clause drawing a card for the controller is much worse in the fair matchups, where basically just eating their mana is maybe not going to be like the most exciting contextually. But against combo, this is great, right? Like the combo decks, basically all of the combo decks in the format currently care really specifically about resolving a specific card. And so this is going to get those, which is quite good. And yeah, I think that in and of itself is quite powerful. The other thing that's nice about this card is it gets around silence, which is something that many of the combo decks have adopted against blue decks. So this is a way where, you don't get colded by a silence if this is your only interaction, which I think is also pretty nice. Next we have Tam, Mindful First Year. This is 1 and then a blue-green hybrid mana. It's a Gorgon Wizard. And then it says each creature you control has hexproof from its colors. And then target creature you control becomes all colors until end of turn. So this is like a blue-green kind of Mother of Runes, right? Like it's worse than Mother of Runes because hexproof is worse than protection most of the time. But it has a static ability, which is nice. So this sort of means that broadly your creatures become more annoying to remove. And if you get to untap with this, they become exceptionally difficult to remove. Importantly, this can't, or it can target itself, but doing so doesn't actually gain you any value because it's other creatures that get hexproof from each of its colors, not Tam. So that's like not the best, but I do think this card is interesting. Like this is definitely a decent creature combo card. Like Bant Nadu is definitely interested in a card like this. I could see other creature combo decks wanting to reach for it as well. Don't think this is a fair card. I don't think it's quite good enough in that regard. Although I could be wrong. Maybe there are like green mid-range decks that are just happy to play this on turn 2 and make it so that their future threats are challenging to remove. But it's only a 2/2, which I think is what holds it back in those contexts. I think you really want to be doing something relatively degenerate with the creatures that you are protecting in order to feel comfortable paying for this. But when this is good, I think it's going to be quite good. Okay, next on to the playable black cards, which I think is we're getting close to the end of this section already. So first we have Moon Shadow. This is a single black for a 7/7. Very exciting. Menace, but it enters with 6/1/1 counter, so it's a 1-mana 1/1. And then it says whenever one or more permanent cards are put into your graveyard from anywhere, well, this creature has a -1/1 counter on it, remove a -1/1 counter from this creature. So this card is kind of like Stalactite Stalker from Caverns of Ixalan, Lost Caverns of Ixalan, but the clause is much better templated. So Stalactite Stalker triggers on end step. It can only happen once a turn, so it's this like kind of gradual grower. It's uncapped, but realistically, if you've gotten a Stalactite Stalker larger than 7/7, let me know, I guess, but I don't think it's something that happens basically ever. So yeah, the good news with this is like if you're putting multiple permanents into your graveyard, this is growing faster. Additionally, it is of note that this doesn't care where the permanents come from. So self-mill triggers this. Like if you Satyr Wayfinder, I don't think that's a card that people are going to be playing a lot, but let's say you do, and you mill over 2 lands and a creature. I mean, this is going to get 3 counters taken off of it. Oh, sorry, it's only 1 counter per instance. So yeah, that's actually because it's 1 or more. Yeah, so I mean, that part makes it a little bit awkward. You do need like separate instances of cards entering the graveyard to grow it, but it's not totally unrealistic to think that this is just going to grow at like a relatively steady rate. And it already has Menace, which is the other thing about this card that I think is pretty nice. If it gets to 3/3, you're probably pretty happy. Like if you play like this on turn 1 and then play a fetch land on turn 2 to make it a 2/2. And then you have like a removal spell, or you crash a creature to make it a 3/3. You're already pretty happy. So I do think that it's pretty decent, but it's not like unreal by any means. But I think it's a good value card. And the big thing is it costs 1 mana, which again is just like so important in the context of modern games. You just can't really be slamming 3 and 4 drops all over the place. You can play some, but you'd much rather be geared more towards cards like Moonshadow. Next we have Bitterbloom Bearer. This is black for a fairy rogue. It's a flash flying 1/1 that says at the beginning of your upkeep you lose 1 life and create a 1/1 blue-black fairy creature token with flag. So this is Bitter Blossom on a body that is a flash flyer. So this is another card that Jared's pretty excited about. I'm less stoked on this one, if I'm being really honest. But the positives are, like, Bitter Blossom is like a powerful effect in fair matchups. And the worst part about it, the thing that has made Bitter Blossom totally unplayable for, a long time at this point, is that you are obligated to tap out on your main phase to play this thing that doesn't do anything, which is obviously not good. And this is much better, right? This is a creature by itself, so if you have to like emergency flash this into block, you can. You can also hold up other spells and then decide whether or not this is correct to deploy on end step, which is cool. You're almost always going to get the first trigger, so it's like almost always going to be basically like black, raise the alarm, which is already pretty good. And if it sticks around, this is a powerful value engine. I think the downsides are that black is a challenging mana cost to get to. I really do think that that's something that I've noticed in a lot of my deck building recently. Like, is these double pip 2 drops put a lot of pain on your mana base. Like it, both in terms of how you build your mana base isn't really going to change based on that, but how you have to structure your game plan a lot of the time can get a bit sketchy if you're not like base this color. So like for example, Dothy Voidwalker is like an exceptionally powerful hate bear that I see included in a bunch of lists where black is not the main color in the deck. And I do think it's like one of those things where it's like, how many games can you realistically cast that on turn 2 and still be able to play Magic, right? Like, um, it's more than 50%, but it's not, the impact is non-trivial. And I think Bitterbloom Bears is going to have a similar story where you're going to, I think, potentially have this card rot in your hand sometimes, or that it's going to make your spell casting feel awkward because of the mana requirements, but the effect is quite decent. I think that, again, this is like another like solid 6 or 7 out of 10 card that's definitely gonna see play in certain shells. And this is another blue-black tempo card, which I think is part of why Chair is so excited about it. I think he's planning to play both these ones, so that's cool. And obviously it does look good in those shells. So yeah, seems very reasonable. I totally expect that you'll see people trying this one, and I think we'll see how much the black ends up mattering. Okay, and that's it. That's all the playable. So I've got a bunch of other cards to talk about from the set. Like, this is kind of the classic section for me where I'm talking about cards that I think you might see play, but these are if the cards that I just talked about are, I think, gonna make it into decks, almost none of them I think are gonna be like none of them are going to be like format all stars, but I think some of them are going to like make it into your deck as like, in the 50 to 60th card range. I think these ones are decidedly in the like 60 to 65, like last 5 cards in, they're often going to get cut range. So first we've got Brigid Klaken's Heart. Klachen's Heart. This is a 2 and a white legendary creature, Kithkin Warrior. Whenever this creature enters or transforms into Brigid Klachen's Heart, create a 1/1 green-white Kithkin creature token, and then at the beginning of your first main phase, you may pay a green. If you do, transform Brigid. I did the thing. I didn't put the transform, which is great. Nice work, me. On the other side, it is a 3/2 that can tap to add any combination of green or white equal to the number of creatures you control. And so that's the exciting part of this card, is that you play this, it's a 2/3, it's like a 2 mana 3/2 that makes a 1/1. And then if you untap with it and you get to flip it, odds are it's making mana, and it's potentially making a decent amount of mana, which is pretty cool. Where are you putting that mana is the question. Now, it makes white mana, which is nice too. It's not just gated to green mana. And then the other thing that you can do is you can, it has that same clause on the other side of, at the beginning of your main phase, you can pay white, and if you do, you can flip it back over to this side where you make another 1/1. So you can kind of like flicker it back and forth. It's like a value engine. And I have to sneeze. Sorry about that. Yeah, and so the other thing that you can do is, with the trigger on the stack, you can tap it to add mana and then transform it to make another 1/1. Like, that's not nothing, but yeah, I don't know. Obviously, this is potentially a pretty good tokens card, like maybe in the Bant tokens deck, or in like some kind of Naya tokens deck. I could see it as well. I was casting United Front all this weekend, and it was very good. So other cards that enable more powerful United Fronts sound good to me. So yeah, I could see it. It's certainly not a card that I think is terrible, but I think that it's relatively limited in the decks that it can go in. And it's like, it is at the end of the day just a 3 mana 3/2 that makes another 1/1. I don't know if that is high enough impact, but I think you'll see people trying it. Iron Shield Elf is a 1 and a black elf warrior, and it's a 3/1 that has the ability to discard a card. This creature gains indestructible until end of turn. Tap it. So this is just like Dauntless Vanguard, but in black, which is pretty exciting. I think this card is kind of neat because black is much more interested in discarding cards a lot of the time. Like, you can assemble some kind of random reanimation packages or like synergies much more easily in black than you would in white. Like Adonto Vanguard is like not a card that is really ever being leveraged in that way. You're just discarding the card to make it indestructible. Whereas like in this context, like, you know, I could totally see you being able to build in a way for the discard clause on this card to actually be like relatively potent in your deck, or something you're genuinely interested in doing. So yeah, I think this is an interesting role player. You'll probably see people including it sometimes. Okay, next we have Unwelcome Sprite. This is 1 in a blue for a fairy rogue flying 2/1. And then it says, whenever you cast a spell during your opponent's turn, surveil 2. So I included this one here, and maybe I'm Fire Nation Occupation pilled because of this weekend and just because of recent deck building. Like I've felt like that card has been insane. But again, this is a 2-drop, which is important, right? It's coming down on the turn that I think is important, which is that it's coming down before that like kind of third turn. And then this incremental value of basically saying like, okay, once I have this in play, anytime I cast a counter spell or a removal spell, I'm smoothing out my draws, I'm dumping stuff into the graveyard for other things. I kind of think that sounds pretty good. Like a 2/1 flyer is not in and of itself especially exciting. I mean, it's not exciting, and that's going to be the thing that keeps this card from being playable if it ends up not seeing play. This does seem like a very good like mono blue like flyers deck. Sorry, mono blue flyers card. Seems like exactly what they're interested in doing, which is cool. But I don't know if you're going to see it reach much farther than that. But this effect is powerful and recurable, not gated to once per turn triggers. Like I think it's always worth at least flagging them, especially when they're on a creature as inexpensive as this. Next we have Adept Water Shaper. This is 2 and a white for a Merfolk Cleric. This is not in my section of playable typal cards, because I think this one is just playable, probably. Which this one says other tapped creatures you control have indestructible, and it's a 3/4. So the basic idea with this is that it just lets you alpha strike with impunity, more or less. The blowout potential is high, so I guess saying impunity is maybe the wrong word, but this does mean that like if you and your opponent are kind of playing this game where maybe you're like fighting over an emblem and you're both slamming things back and forth and attacking back and forth, you get to just kind of attack with your creatures and not necessarily worry about making like chump attacks and things like that, which is cool. Obviously, if this dies during combat, not ideal. It also means that if you have this in play and your opponent does draw a removal spell, it can potentially like disrupt the way that they might deploy a sorcery speed removal spell, which is not nothing. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe this one doesn't see play. The blow potential is too high, but it seemed good enough to be worth including and at least talking about in this section. Next we have Sodden Verger. This is just a continuation of a cycle that has not been finished yet. It started in BFZ. So this is a forest island, and it says this land enters tapped unless you control 2 or more basic lands. So basically, you're not going to play this one unless you're like exactly blue-green, but it's nice. It's another blue-green land. Like if you're exactly blue-green, you will put this one in your deck and you'll feel fine about it. It's not like a, you know, stop the presses kind of card, but you know, this is going to make it into some decks. And I do like that they're completing this cycle. As kind of an aside, like these are really good budget lands. They're fetchable, often untapped duels, and just like the more of those that they can print, the better. I think just make everyone's life a little bit easier and not feel like you necessarily need to have the alpha beta unlimited duels. Okay, next I have Abigail, Eloquent First Year. This is a legendary creature, Bird Bard. Great type line, very good. It has First Strike, Flying, and Lifelink. I don't know if people have noticed that I often read the abilities in the wrong order. I don't know why I do it, but I did. I do it. I guess I was reading them alphabetically. Maybe that's why. No, it's not even alphabetical. I don't know. At any rate, so it has first strike, flying, and lifelink. And then when Abigail enters, up to one other target creature loses all abilities. Put a flying counter, a first strike counter, and a lifelink counter on that creature. This card is really weird. So you're basically like nullifying a creature in exchange for giving it 3 very powerful keywords. So we were talking about this one in Discord because this card's really hard to evaluate. Like the ability to nullify things is probably good, right? Like you get to turn off a Tarmogoyf kind of effect. Like you get to nullify a Barrowgoyf if that's really critical. But like you don't really want to be targeting other things. Like even turning, say, like a 2/2 into a flash flying lifelinker or a flying first striking lifelinker, blanks this, so you're not gonna be able to get in with it anymore. So it's like probably not good. I mean, I guess you would do it if your opponent had like a Nadu in play or a Raphelos in play. Like you got to do what you got to do. You're probably gonna cast this and use it, and having that option is good. One thing that we were talking about is this is quite nice targeting your own stuff. Like if you have creatures that have an ETB but then don't have any static abilities once they've resolved their ETB, upgrading your random 3/3 that's already done something into a much more powerful one sounds pretty good. Is that worth 2 mana? I don't know. This card's really hard to evaluate. I think it's good. I think you might register it. But I honestly, I really don't know. It's really hard for me to evaluate. Yeah, I don't know. I would be curious. I would have to look up how this ruling works. Like if I Tide Hollow Skull or something, and then I Abigail my Tide Hollow Skull, does that mean the card's gone forever? If that's the templating on that, that's pretty nice, and could be a reason why, say, like the black-white kind of like Taxes decks would be interested in this card. Yeah, I don't know. It's really weird to evaluate card. I think I would have been remiss not to talk about it. And this card might appear in 0 decks. But I also think that there's a world where this card appears in like a bunch of decks, and it just turns out that these abilities are kind of sick. I'm really unsure. One other thing that I thought was kind of interesting, this is more of like a game design thing, but this card reads very digital to me because the losing all abilities sticks around. It's not while this creature's on the battlefield. It's not until end of turn, which is like maybe more common Magic the Gathering templating. This is just, it loses all abilities. And I think their rationale for why they felt comfortable doing it is because you're putting a flying first strike and lifelink counter on the creature, and that sort of serves to memoize the fact that the creature has no abilities. But this is not modern. This is not how we would template cards previously. We would certainly not write cards this way. So I do think it's kind of cool to see them expanding into this design space. But that's a different story. That's the game designer side of things. Okay, next we have Kinscare Sentry. I'm probably saying that wrong. This is 1 and a white for a Kithkin soldier. It has first strike, lifelink, and then it says whenever this creature attacks, you may put a creature card with mana value X or less from your hand onto the battlefield, tapped and attacking, where X is the number of attacking creatures you control. So it's not hard to imagine the magical Christmas land environments where this is amazing. You're attacking with 3 or 4 things. You put your Seasoned Dungeoneer in play, whatever. Joy to the world. And I think especially maybe in like these kind of red-white decks that have particularly potent attacking creatures, that could be pretty cool. Like you maybe somehow get up to attacking with 3 creatures. You get to like attack with this, put your broadside bombardiers in play, trigger the raid, get in front, get in for a big attack. Like that's cool. And this kind of like mana cheating can be powerful in these white X aggressive decks. The other thing that this card has going for it, which is nice, is that it has some relevant keywords, right? It has lifelink and first strike. So it is not just a basically vanilla creature with very powerful text. Like it's a meaningful attacker and blocker. It's not going to get chump blocked by tokens. It's going to actually engage in a reasonable way. Mono red players in shambles, by the way. They just love stapling this lifelink word onto creatures these days. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, again, it costs 2, which is nice. I think I think if you go 1-drop and your 2-drop is this, and on turn 3 you're attacking with this and you get to put another 2-drop into play, I think you're very happy. I think that's pretty decent. I just don't know how often that's going to happen. And as a result, I'm not sure whether it's worth building your deck around it. Like, kind of modern taxes and white aggressive decks, like, they don't tend to be structured this way. You're hoping for your creatures to kind of always feel kind of reasonable. Whereas this one, you know, I think you really want to have the sentry on turn 2 as exactly. Maybe you can play it on turn 3 with another 1-drop, but even then I think you're kind of getting into a sketchy place. So yeah, I don't know. We'll see if this one is good enough. It's definitely interesting, but I wouldn't be like shocked if this sees 0 play, or if people just try it and decide it's just not resolvable. So Abundant Courtside is the next card. This is a land that taps for a colorless, or it can add a mana of any color, and you can spend this mana only to cast creature spells, or for 6 mana and tapping it, you can create a 1/1 shapeshifter creature token with Changeling. So this is like Power Crept Ancient Ziggurat, which is like, I mean, Ancient Ziggurat is not a card that sees a lot of play, if any. I don't think it sees any currently, but it's just like worth flagging. I've registered Ancient Ziggurat before in the well-known deck Oops All 1-drops, which I played in like 2015 when like we really had to like scrape the bottom of the barrel to find 1-drops. I think that deck just might be like kind of reasonable now. Just five color, all the best 1-drops. Maybe you just like kill people with a bunch of design mistakes from the 2020s. But yeah, Power Crept, Ancient Ziggurat, just a card we might play. Okay, so next we have Personify. This is 1 and a white for an instant. It says exile target creature you control, then return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control. Create a 1/1 colorless shapeshifter token with Changeling. So this is just another flicker. We're always on the lookout for these ones that do it right away. They've been increasingly templating some of these flickers to be returned on end step, which is worse. The flickers are good, and there's a bunch of decks that have been leaning into trying to do kind of the scammy things with flicker effects. This is a pretty potent one. The fact that this can always at least get you a 1/1 in addition to like resetting a blocker, and or maybe just like retriggering an ETB, you know, like I think this is pretty high on the list right away of ones you're probably pretty interested in playing. So yeah, seems fine. I think you'll play it. I think you'll be relatively happy with it. Okay, next we have Flitterwing Nuisance. This is 1 blue for a 2/2 flying fairy rogue that enters with a -1/-1 counter on it. And then it has the ability 2 blue, remove a counter from this creature. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player or planeswalker this turn, draw a card. So I have this card rated lower than a lot of the other kind of blue cards with these similar kind of effects, like the Glenalandra, the Counterspell one, and the Lockmare from up higher in the set review. Largely in part to the fact that like I think this ability is worse. It's more contextual, and there are not very many decks that are interested in playing a 1-mana 1/1 until this effect comes up. Now I will say, like again, the kind of like mono blue flyers deck loves this card. This is everything this deck wants to do. It's a 1/1 flyer for 1, and then it has the Coastal Piracy effect as a 1-shot thing, which is exactly what that deck is looking to do as well. So, and then there is something kind of nice about it where you get to like make your attacks, and then if they run the no blocks, you get to then decide whether or not you want to remove the counter from this and you know, potentially draw 2 or 3 cards, which is cool. But I just don't think like most decks are interested in playing the front half of this card, even though the second half activation is quite reasonable. Okay, next we have Bristlebane Battler. This is 1 and a green for a Kithkin soldier. It has Trample, Ward 2, and it enters with 5 -1/-1 counters, but it's a 6/6. And then it says, whenever another creature you control enters, while this creature has a -1/-1 counter on it, remove a -1/-1 counter from this creature. So I would have not put this card on the list at all if it didn't have Ward 2, but I think that Ward is like quietly one of the most powerful abilities that you can put on a card these days. Canadian Highlander decks and games are super efficient these days, and uh, Ward 2 might as well read Hexproof in a bunch of these games because the Ward 2 is so disruptive to how people want to structure their turns that it's just not worth targeting. And so the clause on this card is relatively easy to trigger in the decks that want to play it. Like, I actually think comparably it's easier than the black one. It's just this one is obviously, it's in a much worse color, which is why it's much farther down in the set review. But like, you play this on turn 2. I think aspirationally you could play 2 creatures the next turn and have a 3/3 trampler with Ward 2 with room to grow further, which is pretty exciting. This is whenever another creature you controls. So again, I think if you have 2 creatures enter at the same time, I actually don't know. I think if you make 2 tokens, I think you remove 2 counters. Is that right? I think no, right? Because it's whenever. It's not that many counters. No, but it's whenever another creature you control enters. So if 2 creatures you control enter. Yeah. So you would get. So yeah, like if you play a Raise the Alarm or a United Front or something, this is also going to grow pretty quickly, which I think is not nothing as well. So yeah, powerful 2-drop. I don't know. Hard to evaluate, to be honest. I think it depends on what you think the average power and toughness of this is going to be, say, on turn 4. Like if you play it on turn 2, and obviously it's a 1/1 on turn 2, but do you think that like your deck is reasonably going to be in a situation where on turn 4 this is a 4/4 trampler? I think if that's the case, then you're probably interested in it, but otherwise I would think not. Okay, next we have Emptiness. This is 4 black white for an elemental incarnation. This is the first of the new evoke elementals, and they were very careful with how they templated the elementals this time to not make them cheesable, which was probably the right choice. But the way this one is templated, it says when this creature enters, if white was spent to cast it, return target creature with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Then, when this creature enters, if black was spent to cast it, put 3/1/1 counters on up to 1 target creature. And it has evoke white black. So what that means is that essentially, if you evoke it for 2 mana, you can get one of these effects. And if you flicker it, or if you scam it, so you like bring it back from the graveyard, you don't get any of the effects. The ETBs only happen if you've paid retail mana for for this card. I have this one in this category because I think that this return a creature with mana value 3 or less for your graveyard to the battlefield is powerful, and having that on a split card that can also kill something in a pinch is nice. And having this as a kind of like top deck late in the game of like 6 mana kill 6 mana kill something plus bring something back also sounds quite good. I don't think that this is going to see play like super widely, but I think if you're in a deck where you comfortably think that you're going to be able to get to the white and the black by turn 3 or 4, I think you're pretty happy. I think you are willing to pay, slightly more than you would like to for either of those effects to have the flexibility. And then also there's the nice aspect of like, if you do get up to 6 and you play this for 6, it's obviously very good. But this is the only one of these elementals that I have in the fully into the playables category. The other ones are in the I think I'm going to die to this card, I think. Yeah. Okay, playable typal cards. So these are the Kindred cards that I think I could see people registering. First, we have Deep Channel Duelist. This is blue-white for a Merfolk soldier. It says at the beginning of your end step, untap target Merfolk you control and other Merfolk at +1/+1. The Merfolk deck likes lords, and this is another lord, and I think you'll play it. Obviously, the conceit here is that you're going to be playing blue-white Merfolk, but I think that's probably fine. You're probably willing to do that, so yep, I think this one's fine. Similarly, Sig's Command. This is blue, white, and 1 for a Kindred Sorcery Merfolk. It says choose 2. Create a token that's a copy of target Merfolk you control. Creatures target player controls gains lifelink. Gain lifelink until end of turn. Target player draws a card, and then tap target creature, put a stun counter on it. just a bunch of like reasonable keywords here. The create a token is the one that I was kind of like earmarking as the one that you would be most excited about. Many of the lords in Merfolk are non-legendary, so this being like 3 mana make a lord draw a card, or 3 mana make a lord stun one of their creatures sounds pretty exciting to me, to be honest. But again, the conceit is that you're playing blue-white Merfolk, but I think you could. I don't think there's anything wrong with playing blue-white Merfolk. Okay, next we have Sig Wanderwine Wisdom. This one maybe doesn't belong in the typal cards category because this one is the one that is the most likely, I think, to see play in other decks. So this says Sig can't be blocked, and whenever this creature enters or transforms into Sig Wanderwine Wisdom, target creature you control, target creature gains whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player or planeswalker, draw a card. So notably, this can target itself. Obviously, when it enters, you wouldn't want to target itself, but when it transforms, you might want to. And then in the first main phase, you can pay white, and if you do, you can transform Sig. And again, of course, like a genius, I haven't put the flip card here, but the other side is another 2/2, and it says whenever it enters or transforms, you can give target creature protection. I believe from all colors until end of turn. So it's like, okay, you don't have to flicker it, which is relevant, I guess. I'm not convinced on this card, I guess is what I would say. Sig can't be blocked, so like when you flip it back, and you target it, you're gonna get to draw a card. But like you're investing all this mana to like flicker it back and forth. Like, is that good? Is that gonna be strong enough? I don't know. Your opponent can respond to the protection trigger pretty comfortably because it happens as the result of a flip. So like it's not like you can really like hold it up and do it in response to a removal spell. It just seems just fine to me. But Merfolk is probably interested in this card, I would say. An unblockable 2-mana Merfolk that is going to give your other Merfolk draw a card. Seems good. Think that deck is probably interested in it. Next, we have Taster of Wares. This is 2 black for a Goblin Warlock. When this creature enters, target opponent reveals X cards from their hand, where X is the number of goblins you control. You choose one of those cards, that player exiles it. If an instant or sorcery card is exiled this way, you may cast it for as long as you control this creature, and mana of any type can be spent to cast it. So this card is great if you are playing exactly goblins, right? Like if you can get to a number where X is equal to the number of cards in their hand, this is like better Thoughtseize. And otherwise, I mean, it's just always taking a card. A lot of the time it's giving you something that you yourself can cast. And what's important to note is like this is always getting 1 because it counts itself, right? So, and they never get the card back. So I think this card looks pretty decent. And the fact that it exiles is also like pretty nice. Against some of the combo decks in the format, if you exile their key combo piece, it makes it like much more challenging for them to win the game. But the templating on this card where it cares about specifically goblins means I don't think you'll see it get widespread adoption across the format, but pretty good in the goblins deck. All right, we've officially hit I'll probably die to this card. Like I said, this is a much shorter set review. The persist mechanic, or not persist, but the -1/-1 counters mechanic, it's just not there at a Canadian Highlander level. And similarly, like a lot of the Kindred stuff is too expensive or too clunky for Canadian Highlander, or the Kindred decks are just not there yet. Okay, so I have Catharsis. This is the red-white elemental. So this card is 4 red-white, and it says when this creature enters, if white was spent to cast it, create 2 1/1 green and white Kithkin tokens. And then if red was spent to cast it, creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain haste until end of turn. So if you cast this for 6, you are getting like a pretty decently sized alpha strike. You get to attack for 8, assuming you have nothing else on the board. I think the reason why this one will see play, if it does see play, is the split card of this is nice. Like make 2 1/1s is good. Bushwhacker your creatures is also potentially good in a deck that is caring about making tokens. But red-white is kind of actually weird colors for this. The token decks that have been more popular recently don't include both these colors at the same time. Like Jeskai and Mardu were popular for a long time, but they kind of tanked a bunch of points over the last kind of 2 years, and as a result, it's currently not worth playing them. Um, so that's the one awkward thing with Catharsis, because I do think that you want to be able to use both sides. You're not just gonna play this to be the white side, obviously. Next we have Wistfulness. This is 3 green blue for an elemental incarnation. This is a 6/5, so nice size. And it says when this creature enters, if green was spent to cast it, exile target artifact or enchantment and opponent controls. And then if blue was spent to cast it, draw 2 cards, then discard a card. And obviously, like everything else, it has the evoke clause for hybrid blue green. So naturalize plus as one side is definitely pretty exciting. And then having the fallback of this card be draw 2, discard 1, I think is really nice. Like that's one of the better things you could have as your bailout on this elemental. Like 2 mana, smooth out your draw just seems like eminently reasonable. And then the other thing that I like about this one, like in a deck like say like Simic's Law, just getting to 5 mana and casting this on turn 5, putting a 6/5 in play, killing one of their things, drawing some cards sounds great. So this one I think sounds the best to hard cast, and it's because it costs 5 instead of 6, it feels more hard castable than others. But I don't know. I mean, I just hesitate to put green cards especially high on on my radar. Maybe this card is underrated. This is probably supposed to have got into the Fringe playable section, but I don't know. I was just not very high on this set. To be completely honest, I'm actually already done. These are the last cards from my slideshow. So that's all that's all I had for this set, which surprised me. When I went and looked through this, I thought, I might not even do a set review. There were so few cards that I was interested in. I'm just looking through the spoiler again to make sure I didn't miss anything, because like I said, we had the tournament this weekend. I've been pretty tournament prep brained, but yeah, if you have any cards from the set that you think I missed that you would like my opinion on, please feel free to comment them below. I would more than happily tell you why I missed them or why I didn't include them. But yeah, I don't know. I guess the one that's probably worth mentioning that I didn't talk about is the other incarnation, the blue-black one. So that one is blue black hybrid and 4, and it says when this enters, if blue was spent to cast it, you can bounce something, and if black was spent to cast it, you can discard a card from a player's hand. That one's actually probably playable. That's just a miss by me. Sorry, I was clearly scrolling too fast. Here, we'll pull up the Scryfall really quick. Yeah, so yeah, this one seems fine. I think I would play this one, but I don't know. It's not like unreal by any means. And I don't think there's much else in this set that would really like knock your socks off power level wise. So let's quickly look. We can do this together. A fun little post presentation set review moment. Yeah, like I don't see anything else that really jumps off the page at me. The elemental sub theme is not very good. The Kithkin sub theme is unfortunately not very good. This is a card that I think is like vaguely interesting, I guess. So like Lorwyn, Imperfect Naturalist, like when this one enters, you mill 3, mill 4, and then you can put a creature or land on top. So like you could put Meta Fanatic on top, which is I guess fine. But yeah, it's just okay. Fun callback. This activated ability is a callback to the retrace spell, right? Call of the Worm, or I forget what it's called, but there's a retrace spell with that same mana cost. Yeah. I think I think that's it. So yeah, anyway, thanks so much for watching the set review. I really hope you enjoyed it. Let me know if there are any other cards that you think I missed, things that you are excited about playing from Lorwyn Eclipsed. And without further ado, I will see you in the next one.